I never thought my driveway would become a battleground. Most mornings in Maplewood were quiet. The sun would rise over the neat suburban houses, birds chirping while neighbors went about their routines. I had lived here for 10 years without issue. My biggest worry had been mowing my lawn before the HOA sent one of their passive-aggressive notices. Then Mrs. Thompson moved in next door. At first, it was nice seeing kids playing outside again. Her two sons, full of energy, spent their afternoons racing scooters and bikes in the cul-de-sac. But soon, they discovered the shortcut, my narrow driveway that led directly to the park entrance. At first, I let it slide. A few bikes rolling past weren't the end of the world. But soon, they were zooming through at all hours, leaving behind scuff marks, knocking over my trash bins, and even scratching my car. One evening, after nearly tripping over a forgotten scooter, I decided enough was enough. I knocked on Mrs. Thompson's door, keeping my voice calm. "Hey, I wanted to talk to you about your kids using my driveway. It's starting to cause some issues." She smiled politely, but her tone was dismissive. "Oh, they're just kids. They're not hurting anything. Besides, the HOA allows for shared driveway access in community areas." I frowned. That might be true in public spaces, but my driveway is private property. I'd really appreciate it if they used the main road to get to the park instead. Her smile faltered. "I don't think so. It's just more convenient this way." I took a deep breath. "I understand, but it's creating problems for me. Maybe we can find another solution." She crossed her arms. "I don't see the issue here. They'll keep using it. It's not like you own the whole street." I walked back to my house, frustration boiling inside me. It was just a driveway, but it was my driveway. I had no idea this was only the beginning. The next evening, I was in the middle of cooking dinner when my phone buzzed. "Karen, HOA president." I sighed. I had never had direct dealings with Karen before, but I had heard stories. She treated the HOA like her personal empire, handing out fines like they were Halloween candy. "Hello. This is Karen from the HOA." Her tone was clipped, sharp. "I've received several complaints about your driveway. It seems you're blocking access to a shared path." I gripped the phone tighter. "It's not a shared path. It's my driveway. Regardless, the HOA expects all homeowners to be accommodating to the community." "Karen, I'm happy to be a good neighbor, but this is my private property. If kids are damaging my car and leaving things behind, I have every right to ask them to stop." There was a pause. "The HOA has rules. I suggest you take this seriously before we have to take further action." She hung up before I could respond. I stared at my phone. Further action? I didn't know what that meant, but I had a feeling I was about to find out. The next day, I walked out to grab my mail and found a bright yellow envelope stuck to my door. HOA violation notice. My stomach twisted as I read the fine print. Unauthorized obstruction of community access. Fine, $500. Immediate compliance is required. I clenched my jaw. This was ridiculous. As I turned, I spotted Karen watching from across the street, arms crossed, smug satisfaction written all over her face. I wasn't backing down. That night, I pored over the HOA bylaws, property deeds, and anything that could help me fight back. And I found something. A loophole. A way to challenge her authority. The battle for my driveway had just begun. I spent the next few days talking to neighbors, trying to figure out if I was the only one Karen had targeted. Turns out, I wasn't. Raymond, the guy 2 doors down, had been fined twice for having a non-approved lawn decoration, his kid's basketball hoop. Millie across the street got a violation for painting her mailbox a shade too dark. Even the Jeffersons, an elderly couple, had received a warning about their flower beds disrupting community uniformity. "She's running this HOA like a dictatorship," Raymond grumbled as we stood in my driveway. "And we're all too scared to push back." "Not anymore," I said, crossing my arms. "We fight this. Together." I pulled out copies of the HOA bylaws, highlighting Karen's overreach. Turns out, there was a rule requiring homeowner approval for certain policy changes, something she had conveniently ignored for years. We decided to call for a community meeting, and that's when things escalated. Word got out fast. By the time Friday rolled around, almost a dozen homeowners were planning to attend the meeting. But before we even had a chance to gather, Karen made her next move. Early that morning, I walked out to find another yellow envelope taped to my door. HOA violation notice. Unauthorized community meeting. Fine, $1,000. My blood boiled. I stormed over to Karen's house, barely knocking before she opened the door, arms crossed like she had been waiting for me. You can't find me for a meeting, I snapped, waving the paper in front of her. She gave me a sickly sweet smile. HOA gatherings require board approval. Your little meeting is an unsanctioned event. And per the community guidelines, that comes with a fine. Show me where it says that. Oh, I'd love to, she said, stepping inside and emerging a moment later with a thick, leather-bound HOA handbook. She flipped to a page near the back, tapping her manicured finger at a paragraph buried in fine print. It had obviously been added recently. My jaw clenched. You added this, didn't you? Her smile didn't waver. I run this HOA, Mr. Carter, and you'd do well to remember that. I walked away before I said something I'd regret. But I knew one thing. I wasn't just fighting for my driveway anymore. I was fighting for everyone. That night, I got to work. If Karen wanted to play dirty, I'd hit her where it hurt, the HOA board. A clause in the bylaws allowed homeowners to petition for a recall election if enough signatures were gathered. If we got 30% of the community to sign, we could force a vote to remove Karen from her throne. By the end of the week, I had signatures from nearly half the homeowners in Maplewood. We turned it in the next morning. Karen's face when she saw the petition? Priceless. The recall vote was set for 1 month later, and I was going to make sure she lost. Karen wasn't going down without a fight. Days after we filed the petition, she launched an all-out smear campaign against me. Flyers appeared in mailboxes accusing me of trying to destroy the HOA. Social media posts claimed I was anti-community and only looking out for myself. Raymond showed up at my door, phone in hand. You've seen this? She's saying you're trying to turn Maplewood into a lawless wasteland. I laughed dryly. Lawless wasteland? Over a driveway. She's got her loyalists panicked. They think if she goes, the HOA will fall apart. I exhaled. Then we show them the truth. We counter with facts. We printed the financial records we had obtained, documents showing how Karen had increased HOA fines by 300% over 5 years, padding a discretionary fund with no oversight. We posted testimonies from homeowners she had bullied. We went door to door, speaking directly to residents about what was really happening. We don't want to destroy the HOA, I told Mrs. Jefferson. We just wanted to work for everyone, not just Karen. Slowly, the tide started to turn. The night before the recall vote, I found a letter on my doorstep. No HOA logo, no fine, just a handwritten note. Withdraw the petition. You don't know what you're getting into. No signature. No return address. But I had a pretty good idea where it came from. I folded the note and placed it on my kitchen table. Tomorrow, this would be over. One way or another. The room was packed. Homeowners filled the community center, whispering amongst themselves. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Karen sat at the front, stiff as a board, flanked by her few remaining loyalists. The HOA secretary stood. All those in favor of removing Karen Wilson as HOA president, raise your hands. One by one, hands shot up. First Raymond, then Millie, then the Jeffersons, then dozens more. Karen's face twisted as she realized what was happening. The final count came in. 68% in favor of removal. Karen slammed her gavel down. This is a mistake. You'll regret this. But it was done. The recall was successful. The reign of terror was over. A week later, I stood in my driveway, watching my kids play. No more violations. No more harassment. Raymond walked over, grinning. So, Mr. Community Leader, what now? I laughed. Now? We make sure this never happens again. As I looked around at the peaceful neighborhood, I knew one thing for certain. We had won.